allocation ready to go. It's in the budget. It has dollars to back it up. So at this point, we would be, yeah, there's money already there to back that expense up.
I didn't check to find that out earlier. How does that leave that fund? Minus?
So
how many months does he have left?
The wastewater fund at this point is slated in this proposal to transfer $2.2 million out of the operating fund to both the wastewater treatment plant itself, the rehabilitation of our treatment plant, and the $400,000 that we proposed for the Vector truck. It leaves that fund still healthy. The operating fund is still healthy, maintains an adequate fund balance.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I could, Councillor Sanchez is on the line, I believe, and trying to get into the meeting.
If I may, Mr. Chair, it looks like Blair Larson has a question, or has his hand raised anyways. Blair?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. You already covered it. I was just going to specify that those funds have to be used for an economic development purpose. In addition to the SEEP grant, the streetscape plan is also being paid for out of that fund. And so with economic development, there's actually a wide variety of activities that can still count. And so anyway, just to provide more clarity as to what that's paying for. The other tidbit you should be aware of is that recently the council updated the amounts granted for the caps on that SEEP grant. And so there will be higher expenditures starting now, basically, and into the future.
Blair, can I, is it appropriate for me to ask a question now?
It's fine with me. I'm not running the meeting.
Can some of those funds be able to be used for like upgrading parks and that type of thing?
So it has to be used for an economic development purpose. And so yes and no.
What would be
an example of something? Say you had a park that you knew was going to be drawing visitors from other places. Then I think you could definitely make an argument that that's an economic development purpose to bring crowds in from elsewhere. If it's a park and amenities that are primarily directed at residents, then it probably wouldn't be. Does that make sense?
So it's something to geared towards bringing crowds in, like the jamboree is.
Well, right. It's designed to. It's intended to, for projects that add to the business environment, that bring visitors, but also maybe improve parts of the city to make them more attractive to business investment, that kind of thing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Let's hear the executive.
All right. Do we need to approve the minutes?
Yeah, we probably should.
So before we do the executive budget, there are minutes in that came out for the meeting on the 22nd. So we'd ask that you all look those over briefly and decide what to do with them.
I'm shooting up your paper.
So, Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it.
At this point, I will turn it over to City Manager Towery to do the executive and legislative budget presentation.
We got it then, kind of.
Okay, now.
Here you see the organizational chart for the executive. It is slightly different than what's in the book, insofar as this one includes the IT position that council authorized a month ago, 6 weeks ago at their meeting. So as you can see, we answer directly to the city council, who answers, of course, to the citizens of the community. Julian Legia and this IT person are direct reports to me, as well as Blair, Jeff, Brandon, Greg, and a soon-to-be named library services director, hopefully. So, essentially, if you look through this budget, the increase is generally around the information technology services managers, any increases. As we've grown and our technology's changed and we've tried to become more efficient, more effective, we've just grown to a point where a third party that's an hour away from us and not necessarily on call, and when they are on call, are expensive, particularly when you have a library that's open on the weekends and a police department that's open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We just believe that we need and that we can actually do better by bringing a person in-house at this point in time. So that adds about $120,000 to the executive budget. But as you go through the other departments and you go through other expenditure items, you'll notice there's reductions in technical services line items. So what has happened is every department or every fund pays out of their technical services into the contract for our third-party IT administration. So those numbers are now being reduced, and that is being shifted into the executive department in order to pay for this IT person. We anticipate the first 6 months to a year may or may not break even, because as the person comes on, they'll be learning how are we set up, how does our network function, and they'll still have to work in concert with the third party just a little bit until they become familiar. So we'll still have some of those expenses with the third party, but then you should see that start to tail off. And we actually think in the long run, it's going to be a slight savings for the community. On page 60, you'll see there is professional services. That's 290,003,413,320. That's just really right sizing it, looking at what the actuals have been. And that's really the only changes that you would see in the executive budget. Dave asked for a raise, but we keep telling him no.
I'm gonna strike.
Okay, are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. I've asked Brandon about this, but I think membership and dues are very expensive.
Mhm.
Very expensive. I mean, I noticed that the membership dues have gone down in this particular department, but in other departments they've gone up. So
A lot of that has to do, what you're probably seeing is in the public work and bringing in the 5 new people for the wastewater and the water treatment plant. That also brings in their memberships and certification requirements that they have to have, especially with trainings that
But wouldn't that come under training rather than membership and dues?
Yes and no. It go back and forth. It's something that's kind of subjective.
Because I did expect training to go up with that, with those 5 new
Yeah.
people, but it just feels like those outside memberships are digging into our pocket quite a bit. Do we get the benefit from them, I guess is the bottom line word.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I will share with you is when I got here 4.5 years ago, we were very secluded as an organization. We were not connecting with neighbors and other professionals. We have made an effort to do that with all of our staff so that we can learn from professionals in our field. So some of that's related to the council goal of training and growth for our staff.
So that explains why training travel is double on your line item. And now, quick curiosity is computers. I noticed that nothing was budgeted for computers. What's that?
We have lots of computers. I mean, with COVID, quite honestly, we've got, we took COVID dollars allowed us to give everybody pretty much a new computer so that we could all be mobile and work from home. So there should not be any need for computers.
But with a new IT, potentially new IT guy coming on board, wouldn't there be some expense for him that you would not want to put on that?
If I could field that one, the city with available COVID dollars has purchased a significant number of laptops that we have devices ready for the IT person, as well as exchanging devices to make the city a little more nimble in the event that it had to be.
Okay. Yeah, I realize we probably have plenty of computers, but I mean everything else that goes with it and it's involved with computers on top of covered.
Okay, any other?
I have one more question. So I noticed utilities was, you have nothing budgeted in this department for utilities. Is there a reason for that, Brandon?
There is below that utilities line. We have broken out the utilities, so you'll see a natural gas, electricity, phone, TV, internet lines that comprise the utilities. In an effort to be as transparent as possible about our overall expenditures, we created those additional accounts 2 years ago, and we're finally in a position where we know what those actuals look like for each of those that we could budget in those individual line items.
Thank you.
On page, I hope I got these right. On page 59, is that where you guys are at? There's a city council expense allowance, and it's, well, I didn't know that there was ever a count. It says minus 150. I don't know what that means.
The minus 150 was an accounting thing, as far as there was a check that was voided that hasn't been reissued, and so in the 2020 fiscal year it fell as a surplus, I guess, in that line. But the city council expense allowance used to be the line that the council received a stipend in before it was determined that they should be paid as employees of the city, and so that's the old pay line.
Mr. Chair, if I can interrupt real quick, can you check and see? I believe Councilor Richards is trying to get into the call.
Thanks, Brandon.
I don't see him currently.
That negative 150 is how much Dave owes, isn't it?
I plead the fifth.
Mr. Chairman, he's out of order.
I think you'd have to check with Chief Lynn on that one.
I strike the comment.
Any other questions? The big thing you'll see in the library fund as you go through it is that beginning fund balance is growing rapidly. Couple of reasons for that. One is this incredibly hot real estate market that is the Willamette Valley. property values have simply outpaced what we anticipated, and compression has lowered more than we anticipated. So that was a big piece of that. The other part of it was we've been taking money and instead of spending it, holding on to it because we know that our library building has some needs. Whatever the council decides to do to meet those needs, we're just trying to build a fund up so that we have the capabilities to do that when the time comes. So other than that, I don't believe there's any major changes. So I would just take any questions that you might have.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. So, without a director for the last several months, will that will be a savings then, right? That will.
So yes and no. So the director retired in January. The director had vacation and sick leave accruals that they burnt through. So actually this month is the first month that we're actually starting to see some of those savings.
It's negligible. Right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I ask one more?
Yeah.
I see that there's nothing for computers in the library.
Again, we've got computers.
Even
those computers were just replaced, so all of the public computers were replaced within the last 6 to 10 months. So we typically hold on to a computer for a minimum of 4 years before it has to be replaced. If a new director coming in would like a new computer, we are more than covered.
Office supplies is up by 85.6%. Can you explain that one?
Yes, what I would call that is right sizing. So the materials and service budget overall is down 1.1%, but what we tried to do with this budget is make sure that we were allocating to line items that mirrored what they were actually doing, so that there was, again, a transparent process with how we were spending our money. So in the past, if you look at the office supplies line item, it was $5,000 in actual expenses in 2019 and almost $7,200 in 2020. So we did give it a little bit of a bump to kind of round it off, but give them, and especially with a new director coming in, that will afford them some extra wiggle room to be able to get some things they need for their office if they determine there is a need.
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to interrupt again. Both the counselors are trying to get in. They're being told they're on hold to get accepted into the meeting.
Are they using the city council link or are they using the budget link?
They're both calling in. Could I have permission, Mr. Mayor or Mr. Chair, to use my phone? They're texting me so I can respond to them.
You have permission, Mr. Hart.
Can I have permission to tell Ray something? Tell him to go to live.sweethomeor.gov and then click on that budget committee meeting and wait 30 seconds.
Mr. Chairman, if I may recommend, maybe it would be best to take a small recess while we try to pull the rest of our members in, so they don't miss additional information, and then that way we can, Mr. Towery and I can both tag team making sure they get in here.
Let's do that. Let's take a break.
More than.
Okay. Got everybody in one place now?
Did it connect?
Yes.
All right.
Oh, good.
So now we want to hear from Chief Lynn.
You get to sit right here.
Sure, we should make him do
Right
that.
here. And I'm moving.
Mr. Chairman, excuse me. I have a question about the library fund,
Oh, okay.
if I may.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. So I noticed that the administrative charges and the finance charges, one has risen 24%, one has risen 43%. Could I have an explanation for that, please?
Certainly. So twofold. So I'll start with the administrative charges. The biggest increase there is the addition of the IT professional. So the IT services manager is now part of the administrative services calculation. So that is the reason for the jump there. The finance charges, there was not a significant change in the finance department other than the reclassification of one FTE. But those charges are divvied out in the finance department based on number of staff, which wouldn't have changed in this case. Our staffing across the city hasn't changed much, but also then based on the number of checks for our accounts payable process printed by each department. And so the more checks that a department may print, the additional charges they may incur. And so part of the swing for the library may have been the fact that the additional checks were cut in the prior year to cover expenditures.
So you're anticipating a 43% increase in checks written for the library? I mean, that's what the change says, 43%. Which is about $9,000.
Yes. So let me open another document. So I handed out the administrative service charge worksheet at the prior meeting. And I need to pull that up so I can see what I'm working with here. So in the case of the library, it looks, according to our information, there were 391 checks cut last year, which amounts to about 12% of the overall checks cut for across the city. As a result, then for that AP section, they're charged 12% of the related charges. And so in this case, I'm just going to go across the line in that regard. So the police department's portion related to accounts payable is just under 30,000. It's 29,704. The library was 22,005. It's 130,000 for public works and 92,000 for the general fund.
If I can, one thing that I've learned acting in the interim librarian, the library related to this, they buy from a lot of different sources. And so it's a lot of different checks that have to be, they don't order their books all from the same place, which is maybe something that we need to address administratively. So what they've done is, which is a good habit, is they shop for the lowest price. And if they can save a few cents, then they buy it from the source that saves a few cents. But that may not be really saving them in the total cost So it's something that we can look at administratively to keep those costs down for them, if that makes sense.
Okay, any other questions about the library budget? Okay.
Mr. Chair, just for the record, could we just please note that Councilor Sanchez and Councilor Richards did in fact get into the meeting. They've asked to be noted officially. Thank you.
Okay, let's go ahead with police budget.
Are we ready?
Yes, sir.
Well, I first we'll start off. I just appreciate everybody for being here and giving us this opportunity. Kind of present our budget, and as you'll see, I'll kind of walk through it. There's not a lot of significant changes in our budget from the previous year. There is one small staffing change that we'll go through, but we'll kind of explain why that is and hopefully clarify that. But in essence, our budget has not changed drastically. But one thing I wanted to kind of point out, everybody was so quick. It was surprising. I thought it was going to be much more in-depth conversations today. So I'll try to make it as brief as possible. I hate to be the odd duck out. But really, as we go on, wait a second, there it is. I always like to point out just some of our policing principles, and they're not unusual, but this is really what guides our whole department and how I think we've been successful in the past. And I think some of our success you can even go back and look at our passage of our levy in November. We passed it significantly with yes votes, and so it's been a blessing. But really, if we keep operating under this procedural justice model, treating people with dignity and respect, giving people a voice, conveying our trustworthy motives, and making reasonable and transparent decisions, we're going to have the support of the community. And you know, in previous meetings, we've talked about Robert Peel's principles, and that is it's vital to keep the community's trust, and that's really what our goal is to serve this community. And so I did. But this slide is the police department we're a people business. That's what we operate. We deal with people constantly. Our employees are really our most valuable commodity. We give them a tremendous amount of authority, a tremendous amount of responsibility to go out and make decisions that affect the lives of people in our community. And so we invest a lot of time and a lot of resources into our staff. And you'll see the majority of our budget is, I think it's over 69%, is staffing costs associated with benefits and wages. And so it's a very large portion, but that's the reason. There's a lot of responsibility that goes into this. Last year, as most probably know, we had a significant transition in some of our staffing. We actually had some turnover, unexpected turnover. It was what I would call it in the police department. We lost 3 police officers. One went to an agency up north, a larger agency up north, and 2 left law enforcement altogether. And so that left a void, and 2 of those were long tenured employees. And so it's left a void that we're working on filling right now. And on top of that, we have our longest tenured sergeant, 28 years, is set to retire in July. So we're currently working diligently to fill those positions and get us back up to full staffing so we can really employ some of the principles that we want to, as far as the problem-oriented policing model and finding solutions and solving problems. And that's really our goal, to get back to that. Um, as a result of that significant turnover, we're still down we have 2 open police officer positions right now, and we have 1 police officer that we've hired that's in training, and he probably has 4 to 6 weeks left before he'll be out on his own. So if you can recall that in order to train a police officer, we're looking at a minimum of 9 months, if not, 9 to 18 months before we're really confident in them going out there and making the decisions for our community. And with that said, when you look at the salaries, we're investing heavily in our employees right off the bat. If we're looking by the time they're trained and you're comfortable with them going out there, it's $60,000 to it could be upwards of $120,000 that we've invested with salary and wages and benefits into people. And so we really take our time to find those right people that will fit our culture and our community, and that have the potential to really serve us well. So we don't fill these positions instantly. When a position opens, we're seriously looking at probably 4 months before we have somebody back in that seat by the time we open it up, do the testing process, and once we identify those potential applicants, then there's a lengthy background investigation that we do on them. And so it literally is probably close to 4 months before we get them hired. So we have 2 current openings right now, and we anticipate the sergeant retiring and having a 3rd. And so that's not all bad. It's given us an opportunity to reorganize our department, which many have seen. And if you'll see, there's an org chart. I don't want to hit the button too many times. There it is. You'll see the new org chart that we have for our department. The previous org chart included myself and 4 sergeants, and then patrol staff and detectives underneath that. What we've done is we basically kept the same amount of employees, but we have reorganized. We've removed one of the sergeant positions, so in this new organization, we'd have 1 captain, which would be directly under me, like a second in command, and 2 sergeants. And that would be our police officer supervision, aside from our dispatch center as well. And so we're able to be basically cost neutral and adjust our organization. I think this gives us a little bit more ability to plan for some succession, as well as increase our investigative capacity. You'll see that there's 2 detectives listed here on this org chart, whereas we're currently operating with 1. So the majority of it has been cost neutral. There is one change that we're requesting in this budget, and that's on our dispatch center side. In the end of 2020, or right at the year change, we had our long tenured dispatcher / evidence tech / records custodian retired. And so when she retired, we still currently are operating with four full-time dispatchers, 1 part-time dispatcher, and 1 communication supervisor that fills in at dispatch when needed. So if you think about that for a second, our dispatch center runs 24/7, 365 days a year, and we're running that with 4 full-timers and 2 fill-ins, which is impressive. And that goes really back to the quality of people that we've hired and their dedication. They are there every day, and it's encouraging that we have that, and we're still excited to be able to offer that dispatch center to our community. What we're asking in this budget is to increase that part-time dispatcher, that 0.5 FTE, to a full-time FTE. And this will allow us, so we'd have basically 5 full-time dispatchers plus the community, plus their communications commander, their supervisor. It will allow us to have a little bit more flexibility in our staffing, our shift coverage, but it also does another thing. It will allow us to, again, plan for some transition, some succession in the near future. As you may have seen recently, within the last few weeks, our communication commander, Penny Leland, It was her 40th anniversary at our department. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of years left before she pulls the trigger. She's guaranteed me 2, but you know, 2 bad days and that might be it. So we really, yeah, so I didn't clarify years or days, but so this will allow us some flexibility to bring some people or bring an individual on a little slightly different shift to begin learning some of the knowledge that she has. And we're in a process of trying to, both her and I, of developing manuals for our successors, because you know the time is going to be here, and so we're really focused a lot on that. So that is really the change in our staffing level, is requesting another half-time FTE for our dispatcher. The dispatcher is currently hired, so it would be bringing her up to a full-time. As I said,
Chief, can I just ask one? So are you going to have a half-time person too, or are you just going to have the full-time one?
Just the full-time.
So that's
going to
be enough.
Have a half-time.
That'll be enough. Okay.
I guess we're a capital expenditure. I'm just clicking right along as well. In our budget, you'll see we have minimal capital expenditures as far as item-wise. We're not public works, right? So we're much more small and compact. Brandon mentioned, you know, in his budget that he was the bread and butter of this place. It's bothered me ever since, you know. Greg and I are like the meat and potatoes for his, and you know, I'm like the tofu and salad for me. So I don't know. It bothered me, Brandon. So you'll see a series of capital projects that we're requesting. One under the project and improvements, it's for $21,000. Our goal is to improve the transparency and our investigative abilities as best as we can, and we want to put video cameras in each of the patrol cars. Again, transparency as also evidence purposes. And so we anticipate that whole project, because we do not have them. We have the body-worn cameras, and our intent would be to get equipment that mirrors the body-worn camera, and they can kind of blend together, same type of storage, and really just improve some of our ability out in the field. And that's that's under the, yeah. And the machinery is our back gate. We need a new gate opener, our back gate. We've battled that for years, and so it is just time. Our building, as most of you know, is 20 years old right now, and so it's approaching 21 years old, and so we're coming to that point where we're starting to tackle some improvements on it. And then you'll see under the vehicles, we have 2 vehicle requests. One, last year in the budget committee, we talked about replacing our K9 vehicle. That vehicle was donated to us, and it's a 2013 Chevy Tahoe that has 135 miles. Deschutes County was gracious enough, as you all know, that donated that vehicle to us, but it's beginning to have some significant issues, specifically in the air conditioner, and we're concerned about running it much longer with the dog. And so the other one, so that money, we would plan last year to funnel that money with some USDA grant. And then we all know what happened, and that grant kind of, they took the grant funding and kind of tightened the strings on that. So we just basically rolled that fund over. We didn't spend the money that had been put in last year's budget, and it's rolled into this year's budget. A cost for a K9 vehicle we're anticipating is about $50,000 because of the special equipment that has to be on it for the dog. And then we're also trying to maintain our existing patrol fleet. It was about 3 years ago that we finally had some relief, that started getting relief from what's it called? We were getting out from under our leases, and our revenue stream was increasing. Compression was decreasing, and it allowed us to really attack some of our fleet issues. You know, we were running our cars well into the ground, and so we've been able to modernize our fleet significantly. And so this would also allow us to replace one patrol car. For our patrol cars, we put anywhere from 15, typically 18 to 22,000 miles a year on them. And so we plan to keep them about 6 years each car and transition out. So about 3 years ago, we really started being able to replace some of our vehicles, and we're trying to keep that up, keep our fleet efficient. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to just.
I'd be kind of curious on the marijuana tax, if we could put money towards K9, that.
Well, so you last year, I believe it was Blair coined the phrase about, I won't repeat, but about using it for the library, and that's what the council decided to do with the discretionary portion.
So the marijuana money per our city code requires that the money be deposited into the general fund. Currently, that is where it resides. It is transferred out on an as needed basis to fund various projects. If the budget committee chooses to use it for the library or for the police department, certainly would be the prerogative of this committee. But for the moment, it resides in the general fund.
I'm aware of that. I understand that with council was pushing it towards the library. I understand that, and I think that's a good thing. But I'm a proponent of the K9. I think that's an important aspect of our police department. I think that we need to enhance that program. That's just my opinion. I would like to see, if not all of it, but I'd like to see some of that, the marijuana tax money go to the K9 program.
Well, and we definitely appreciate that. Right now, our program operates just as the other our other patrol services operate. So we really don't split out anything. Quite honestly, so much of our community has been gracious enough that really Gemma doesn't cost us a huge amount in upkeep for because of donations that we receive. And so the biggest upgrade we need is the vehicle. Those vehicles come specially equipped with, when the heat rises to a certain level, if the air conditioner shuts off, certain alarms start going off for the handler. At some point, even the doors would pop open so the dog could get out if the heat rose. So they're special equipment.
Again, I'm not necessarily going for the 4 legs. I mean, we could use it for the 4 wheels. So.
Oh yes, yeah, okay.
Are you saying that you don't want the money, Jeff? You don't need the money?
Well, you guys took it from me last year, so I'm a little cautious. It's like a yo-yo.
Well, we gave you some according to the levy, and then we gave the other part to the library. So I would also submit that some of that money.
I think the revenue, of course, I'm being a little proactive here, but I think the revenue is going to be a lot higher than that based on information that's came back so far. So.
Sure.
And so I think some of it could go towards the CD.
Yeah, I guess my statement would be that in our existing budget, we have the funds that would be able to pay for that out of what we have listed here. So that's completely at the discretion of this budget committee on how they'd like to appropriate some of that. But right now, based on the revenue projections, even the projections that are on here are like 14%, 14.5% above last year's, which is phenomenal. We could all remember 5 years ago. So it's phenomenal. But I do like money, Greg, or Mayor Waller.
Well, I'm not saying every year we give money out of the marijuana, but I think in this case, again, I think that we need to enhance this K9 program. It's been very valuable to this community.
So I guess
I make them a recommendation that we put some money towards the vehicle.
I would second that recommendation.
Do we have an amount?
My best estimate would be 50%
of the marijuana money.
Sorry. That dollar amount is already accounted for, though, in this budget, in the levy.
Okay.
So there's not. So he's not short. Let's put it this way.
I guess my question is if we could put some money, you can use the money for other things within the police department too.
So essentially, what would happen is we would transfer out of the general fund, transfer it into the police department. It would add to the ending fund balance at this point, since it's already accounted for in the expenditure authority. but it would provide with additional funds in the future for the police department to basically utilize.
Now, that would be the effect. You would be building their beginning fund balance or their savings account by shifting those funds in there, which is certainly your prerogative.
No, I'm just
to
up
be
to the
clear.
budget committee. I'm one
one
voice.
Just to be clear, he's getting. I mean, he'll take it.
And here's what I would suggest. Quite honestly, we have the funds right now in this budget, and I would hate to take money that just sits there that could be used. But I will say that I could come back in a short time later at some point with a program or a project that could be geared towards youth and some outreach programs that might be well served with something like that.
Where are we sitting with the DARE program?
Well, and that we could roll into that. DARE's really been stopped since school stopped back in March. You know, that the first part of the year, our school resource officer was just getting into it. He has actually been teaching some classes still through distance learning online. And so I believe even next week he's still going to be teaching some class with DARE. But I think there's some programs that, you know, I don't have them right now, and I couldn't even throw any out for you that may be beneficial for some of our youth.
So I'm not sure when to speak or not here. What about the bolstering up the narcotics enforcement, maybe that area? And then the other suggestion I might have is homeless situation that we have going on here.
And Mr. Schaefer, I completely agree. And I was talking to Mr. Brianna about this earlier, about our ability to investigate drug crimes right now. We don't have the capacity right now until we fill some more people in some seats. We have one detective, and he literally focuses just on abuse investigations and person crimes and the larger property crimes. Once we fill some of these seats, if you'll definitely see in the organization chart, the org chart, that we've included a second detective that could really focus on some of the drug activity here in town, as well as the captain. That captain spot could kind of oversee the majority of that activity and really focus and direct the two detectives on the tasks. That's been left to me, and I get caught down in the weeds, and then I'm up high, and then I get lost, and I don't do the greatest job leading our detective right now, and that's just the reality of it. But I completely agree with you. We need to improve this year in our narcotics enforcement.
Well, I just got to say, I sure hand it to you, Jeff. What you've done through the years has just been remarkable. And I, from the community, I know that I appreciate it. And I know that you've addressed every challenge that came to you throughout the years, too, in a professional manner. And I do appreciate that as well.
Well, I appreciate that.
Mr. Chairman, so Garrett, have you gotten a ticket for speeding in your wheelchair or something? What's going on?
I'm just trying to avoid that. I was hoping to have a jail-free card.
I actually have a question for Jeff. So Jeff, so you've budgeted the money for the K-9 vehicle then in this year's budget? Is that what I'm hearing?
Correct.
Okay, so what's the reason we need to take money out of the other one to put into there at this point?
I don't have a reason for that at this point. I think I'll come back with a reason.
If I could
okay, so
if I could field that for him, the benefit at this point would be that it would help the 5-year forecast. So the funding would offset. Basically, they're going to use property tax dollars to purchase that vehicle. Instead of using property tax dollars, if you were to make this adjustment, they would use the marijuana money. The property tax dollars would remain for future fiscal year use. So all that does at this point would be to pad the fund balance for later use.
I guess, I use the K-9 program as an example, but my concern is the mental health, the homeless situation, the DARE program, everything that's wrapped around this, because I don't necessarily say we're out of the COVID situation, but it has created its problems because of it. So, I just want to make sure that we've got it covered. And if we do, that's great, then disregard my proposal. But if we have a need for, some of this marijuana tax money for the police, I'd say now it's time to at least give a little bit. I'm not saying all of it, but some. But that's up to this committee. I'm just throwing this out to make sure that we are covered moving forward. So.
I agree with the mayor. And then also, what about training all these new hires? There's going to be some costs associated with that.
Those costs are really eaten up in our just typical wage and benefit package that the employees get. There's little to no extra cost associated with bringing the officers on. What additional cost is some uniforms and some vests. The bulletproof vests are specifically tailored to each officer. So that's really the cost that's associated with that. The rest, all of their training at the police academy is paid through the state. Like when you get your tickets, most of that money goes to the state DPSST to fund our police academy and fire academies, things like that.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. So, I believe that the marijuana money should be used to better the police department programs. And Jeff, if you're thinking about a program in the future, I think having that money available for you to do that kind of program would be very beneficial. That's what the money was for originally, and we changed our minds on that. But I think that Mayor Marler is correct that we should put some money into some programs, whatever you feel is valuable for fighting the problems that the city has.
If I might offer an opportunity, I guess, for the budget committee as well. There's been discussion of wanting to use the marijuana money to support the library and the police department. One way that could be done is that funding. Okay, stick with me for the description because I think it'll make sense when I get there. But that funding could go into the internal service fund to offset what the police and library have to contribute in internal service charges. And what that does is leaves dollars in those funds that they wouldn't be paying to the internal service fund because they have that offset. That would support the library, that would support the police department by ensuring that those funds remain in their fund for future use or for additional program needs, whatever may arise. That would check the box, I think, of what the committee has so far discussed this evening and mentioned in the last fiscal year of supporting those two programs.
And that's what we decided on last year, was the police department would get the levy and we would give them the other marijuana money to the library fund. So that's what we did last year. So the library fund is pretty flush. Just as
a point of information, no final decision was made on the marijuana money last year by the budget committee. It remained in the general fund. There was a discussion of doing something with it, and nothing actually occurred out of action by the budget committee or the council.
So there's actually 2 years of marijuana money in there?
There is the current year's marijuana money and the marijuana money that we are talking about for the next fiscal year beginning July 1.
Well, I thought, last year when we did the marijuana, because the police department was down an officer or so because of cost or something, and like I made a comment that I like to sleep at nighttime because I feel safe to have officers out on the street, and I thought that's what we were going to budget some of that marijuana money to the police department to bring on the extra officer to bring their staff up to par.
The ultimate end result out of the committee was to leave the marijuana money where it was to allow the council to determine in the future where it might be beneficial, but to go ahead and fund that extra officer. So we funded that officer straight off of the police department's revenue streams and out of its bottom line. The marijuana money remained and still remains in the general fund to this moment.
How do we go about
I think that
some money to the chief here? What would we have to do? Is that a recommendation?
So the thing to remember is when the marijuana money sits in the general fund, you have complete discretion with that funding as it sits. And that's why So going back to Brandon's comments, if you recall, we did the 5-year forecast last year. When we included that additional officer that the committee recommended, it put that 5-year forecast in the red. And the idea was that marijuana money could sit there in the general fund. And again, the general fund is the one fund that you have complete discretion over where that goes. There are no ties to that money. What has transpired in this last year, which is if there was a silver lining to COVID, is that federal dollars have been allocated and we were able to, or we are able to utilize that funding for wages, salaries and wages for police officers as essential workers. And by that money, we've been able to put into the police department, cover wages. And so now that 5-year forecast is no longer in the red, and they have the additional officers in the budget for each of those years. Probably the lone bright spot, I think, for out of COVID that I can come up with off the top of my head anyways. So we can, what I'll remind you of is last year the discussion was, and council is going to see a recommendation on the library facility, I believe at your next meeting. If you leave that money in the general fund, it gives you complete discretion, I believe, to either support the police department and programs out of that general fund, or support a library project of some type, whatever you decide that would be, or to sit on it and do nothing with it, or to divvy it up differently. But keeping it in the general fund just gives you the flexibility moving forward versus transferring it from one fund to the other right now. Just thought process. So by putting it in the general fund, you're not limiting your options, I guess is what I'm saying.
Couldn't it be a year-to-year thing?
Yes.
So, 1 year, you decide, well, it goes to the library, this year it goes to.
You could, yeah, absolutely.
So is that done specifically for the council, or can the budget committee?
The budget committee can make a recommendation and approve a budget that then goes to the council for a final adoption. So if the budget committee chooses to make adjustments to this budget, this is the time.
Mr. Chairman, if I could, so I want to make it perfectly clear. At this point, Jeff, you have enough to do with your budget right now without taking money out of the general fund. Is that what I heard?
Yes, based on our revenues, yes.
Okay, so in my opinion, why would we take money out of there if we don't need to? You've already budgeted for, and then later on, if you come back and want to do your projects that you want to do, I'm okay with that. But it seems like it doesn't make any sense to put money over there now that you've already budgeted for. When we can come back, and if you need that 30,000 or whatever it is, we can say, okay, fine, we'll do that. It doesn't seem to make much sense to me right at this point. I mean, I'm okay with what the budget committee says. I don't, if that's what they want, that's what we'll do. But it just doesn't make a lot of sense to transfer money that you don't need. You might want, and you do, obviously, but why do we need to do that? If you had the programs right now, I'm on board.
Mr. Chairman, I've got another question for Jeff. In your budget, did you say that the cameras for the patrol cars, is that extra money that you're requesting to put the cameras in?
It's budgeted funds right now. We're requesting budgeted funds right now.
Because I feel like we should definitely get those cameras. Yes. Because of all the police departments of problems that are going. It gives it a second check and balance with the camera in the vehicle as well as the camera on the officer itself. So we don't miss anything, so the community feels safe and they can see that things are being reported right.
I completely agree with you, and that's why we really wanted to put those cameras in this year. And quite honestly, we're getting to be in a position where we can start upgrading some of our technology, which, years past, we were scraping by. We all know that with compression.
So you have money already funded for that?
Yes, correct.
So to clarify, everything that Jeff has talked about is in this budget and is funded fully, completely.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Brandon, how much is in the marijuana fund right now? So to speak, fund, if you wish to call it that, whatever it is.
Pot money.
The pot money. What is the pot money?
Give me 1 second and I can
Okay,
provide you with
thank
that
you.
answer.
Jeff, I've got a comment too. You're absolutely right. The history that we've had in the last forever with the levies has been a real challenge. And we've ran without enough police officers many, many times. And we've been really blessed the last few years to get where we're at today. And that levy really surprised me, but I am so happy that it happened. And getting your people in and out, I understand that. It's hard. It's difficult to look forward and see what's going to happen. And while he's looking for that, is Jason going to hire back?
It does not sound like it right now. He hasn't given anything formal yet, but from what I'm hearing him say, no, he's not planning on it.
Well, good for him if that's what he chooses. Yeah, he's been here a long time. So I don't want to make one more say. The K9 thing's a big deal. If we have to buy the rig, but then we need to buy it. That's just all there is to it. There's no reason to go around it, beat around the bush, and so anyway, good.
To be honest with you, if I had my way, we'd have two K9 vehicles. 2 vehicles and 2 K9s.
Mr. Chair, if I may. I think that we're at 95,000 for the marijuana tax, if I'm reading the line item right.
Correct. That's what it was in 2020.
That was 2020, yes.
Okay, my bad. Thank you.
So to date, and this data is probably a month old, we had generated $31,124.
Is that in addition to the 95,000?
This is the first year that we began putting the money in the general fund. So it would be 31,000 is what is residing in the general fund that could be reappropriated should the budget committee or the council decide. The prior years, we saw money spread across both the general fund and the police department in line with state law. But after the state changed their rules regarding marijuana deposits, the money started going into the general fund. So at this point, what we have to play with is 31,000 plus anything that comes in the following fiscal year.
Okay.
That's about how much that car is going to cost.
The car, I think the car's been budgeted at 50,000.
Oh,
correct.
It's a down payment then.
We still have it.
So,
Hold on.
Somebody.
Councilor Richards is
in the general fund.
Sorry, Councilor Richards is asking to speak.
Is that what we want to do? Is leave the pot money in the general fund?
I would say that's up to the committee to decide.
Councilor Richards has got a question.
Not really a question, kind of an opinion, but I feel like with all the events that have happened this last year regarding police and just everything that's kind of taken on the national media, I think that we should transfer the marijuana funds towards the police department, because I think it would be good to have new programs. And I also think most of the people in Sweet Home would agree with me when I say that, because I think the police levy had passed by 74%. So all the money that they can get, I think, would be better.
I agree.
Okay.
So I think what we would need at this point, pending what we decide at the end of this meeting, the goal of this meeting is to finish off these presentations. I'm not trying to hurry you along at all. Finish these presentations and get to approval. So before we can do approval of the budget, we would need to have a recommendation from the committee, if anything, on what to do with this money. So is there a recommendation from this committee to assign that money to a specific place, leave it in the general fund? We would need some direction so that we can make sure that your motions are correct later this evening.
I think we ought to leave the money in the general fund. And then we can use it wherever we need.
If it helps, I can specifically earmark those funds on an ongoing basis so that anytime there's a request to find out how much has been deposited and remains in the general fund for future years, we can pull that up. But
Well, it seems like we left it in the general fund last year and then it didn't get used, but it was tied to the police department since day one. I mean, you're introducing the, it's like having here we're going to put in a new liquor store and a new pot shop here, so it seems like, and now that's generating money. It should go into, keeping our streets safe with that activity going on, I guess.
Which is where it was initially set by the state to go, correct? So
a portion was set by the state to go there, yes. Anything received by the city for the cities, I think it's a 3% tax, was required to go into the general fund. Everything received by the state, as far as in the form of a revenue share, is what the state calls it, was required to go to the police department for police department programs. That requirement no longer exists. Correct.
I don't know whether you want to definitely just say it has to automatically go to the police department. You could recommend that if Jeff comes and says, I really need that car, I need the vehicle for the canine, give it to him. I mean, I don't know how to make that recommendation. How do you do that?
Well, and if I might really, what's in this current budget is all funded. I always hate to be, I've been, saying I don't need money right now, but we really don't. And what this would do, as the bread and butter finance director said, it would basically insulate our ending fund balances at a later date and our beginning fund balances. So, and I'm saying that with some reservation, I hate to get money back, but until I have a project, a use for it, I'd feel slightly guilty taking it. So,
Mr. Chairman, I make a recommendation that we leave the marijuana money in the general fund designated for police programs.
Perfect.
So I have a question. So if we do that, Counselor, I don't necessarily have an issue with that, but if we specifically say it's for the police and we need it for something else, is it going to be stuck in the police thing? I'm not saying we don't need to do this, Chief, but I mean, so if we designate it to that, is that then we're locked into that then?
No.
Okay, that's all I need.
And no offense to the budget committee as a whole, but certainly the council has the ability to override decisions of the budget committee.
Yeah.
So if the budget committee decides to leave it there and the council adopts that, great. If next fiscal year you come back and decide that money should actually instead go to the library because it's necessary for a specific thing, the council has that authority to reassign.
But it's limited. There's enough.
There's a dollar percentage before it kicks
Yes.
into a public hearing, but you're not limited in how much you can change.
Yeah. Okay.
Then I'd need dollar amounts or where you want it to go. or percentages. Then that's how the deposits as they come in would be done.
Well, we got a motion in a second. Or,
Yes, leaving it in the general fund.
the motion is to keep money in the general fund. And everybody that's in favor of that, say aye.
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 We probably should have a roll call.
Opposed? Should we do a roll call?
Well,
I thought about that.
It would likely be easier from the standpoint of identifying the vote count later. Right, you need to.
Councilor Gerke.
I couldn't hear what Ken said.
If I,
read
Chair,
the motion.
if I may ask a question before we vote, is any of these accounts making money? Like, if it's in the general fund, does it make any money? Or if it's in the police fund, does it make any money while it sits there waiting to be allocated?
every one of our funds has interest earnings, and it is equal all the way across the board. So if our general cash account makes 25%, it doesn't. But if it made 25%, then each fund would get 25%.
Okay, so it doesn't matter where we switch it to. Okay, ready for voting. Yep.
So, Mr. Chairman, excuse me, may I restate the motion so everybody understands?
Certainly.
So my motion is that we leave the marijuana money in the general fund designated for police programs.
I second that.
Counselor Coleman. Yes. Counselor Gorley. Mayor Mahler.
Yes.
Counselor Gerson.
Yes.
Counselor Trask.
Yes.
Counselor Richard.
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez.
Yes.
Garrett Schaefer.
Yes, please.
Bob Brianna.
Yes.
David Loman.
Yes.
Derek Dix.
Yes.
Kenneth Hamlin.
Okay. Remain in the general fund earmark for police.
Well, not all that was my fault, taking all that time up, all right?
Be very careful.
So really, as I'm going on with my presentation, all of the staffing issues, all of the funds that we receive are really geared towards, as I mentioned earlier, finding solutions and solving problems. And these are some of the programs, projects that we work on throughout the year. As Mr. Schaefer pointed out earlier, homelessness is an issue that we've been working on, and we're making some positive headway on that. And so, which is surprising. It has taken a long time, and it's not a fast-moving train, but we are moving forward on that with some exciting stuff, as well as our theft reduction programs and our warrant reduction programs. I know the court is actually eager to get into that as well. And the final one is traffic. As we all heard at the last council meeting, you know, traffic enforcement issues are still a major concern, and I think it's even going to become more to the forefront when we get that data from the speed monitoring devices that are being installed along Main Street. And the last really section is on materials and services. You know, our materials and services line has basically gone up 3.5%. From last year's. And so we could go down line items, but I'm not sure that's necessary. I'm sure there's some questions. And so that was really, in essence, my presentation. And so hopefully you have some questions that I can answer.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to say I really do appreciate the police department, all the work they do. I know everybody's expressed that. I was reading an article today about how many police officers are leaving the force because of the culture that we're in right now, and I just want to say thank you for your dedication and your commitment to this community. You know you have the community's backing of you, so thank you.
And we really appreciate that, and we've been blessed with the community support in this whole region, and so we're just very thankful for that and count our lucky stars every day.
Mr. Chairman, I ask you every year, besides the training going up to BPSD and all that, is your training money enough to do outside of going your people up to Salem to get that training? For instance, if this officer there wants to have training somewhere, do you have enough money to cover that?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
And, our training budget has been sufficient, and I think it'll be more than sufficient this year. You know, the difficult part is we're doing so much in-house training right now with the new people we're bringing on that some of our training, and this summer, and I have to look at somebody to confirm, but we plan on doing some training within the schools for active shooter training to get back involved in some of that. And we still want to bring some more CIT training, the crisis intervention training, to all of our officers and really get us up to speed, because that's such a huge topic right now and point of consideration.
Yeah. Hold him to that. You guys hold him to that.
Hey, Jeff, quick clarification on the insurance as to why it went up so much. Just, I think I have the answer, but clarification.
Sorry, I'm going to steal that one from him. It's the jail. We're seeing a significant increase in the insurance rates for the jail. And even though we don't have a full-fledged jail, our holding cells are classified as such as far as CIS, our insurance carrier, is concerned. And so we are paying an arm, a leg, and probably the police department's firstborn for that.
And really, that is a topic that I need to bring to council, maybe in this next fiscal year, on what do we want to do with the status of our jail. We're classified as a municipal jail through the state that would allow us to hold people up to 96 hours. The liability and our staffing levels to do something like that, it makes CIS cringe. And last year, when they came and did our jail audit, they were nearly begging us to move away from that status.
That wasn't quite where I thought that was going with it, but that is ridiculous in my opinion, and I have to agree with you. We need to address that. And then just throw a little humor out here. I noticed that food and beverage went up 130%. Is that because donut price?
Inflation.
Okay. Just kidding. Thanks, Jeff, with all you do. And like I say, we really greatly appreciate what the police department does for our community.
We do appreciate that.
Yeah, I agree with that. But that first picture you put up was not a very good one for 5 guys standing or 4 guys standing there. Yeah, those guys. Yeah, that's not a good look for you.
You've got to bring some humor.
I notice you're not there, but you're throwing those guys under the bus. That's really bad. You guys are doing a good job. I hope I tell you enough, okay?
I really enjoyed the multi stuff that you guys are doing on.
And we will have to credit the sergeant in the uniform right behind me with all of that effort, because I am not that creative, and he does an amazing job.
Well, it's fun. Any other questions? Thank you so much.
Well, thanks for your time. Thanks for volunteering.
We do appreciate everything that you and your people do.
Everybody have a question?
All right, we are not done, but I don't anticipate this taking a very long time. I say that, and I may have jinxed it. So we're going to talk briefly about non-departmental, because we haven't talked about that yet. Non-departmental is what it's called because there isn't a better place to put this money. So what does non-departmental cover? The list on the screen in front of you, it covers our communications team, i.e. one person as far as that team is concerned, and associated expenditures for software, office supplies, very small amount for office supplies, cell phone, stuff like that. It covers the cost of the city attorney. The public works admin staff and associated vehicle purchases are included in the non-departmental because there isn't a division for which they fall into specifically, and so they're lumped into one kind of general spot. There are expenditures for the city hall building as it supports multiple departments. It covers expenditures out of the building fund, which at this point primarily is transfers and a debt payment to cover the 10-year debt that was incurred to pay for this facility. It covers the community center costs, street lights. The electricity costs associated with the street lights are included in non-departmental, as is the cost associated with the Sweetheart Run. As far as the budget for the proposed budget for the 2022 fiscal year, the new stuff this year are as follows. We have added some funds into this budget for City Hall additions. There's $150,000 budgeted for an emergency generator. The actual power supply and utility lines for the generator were installed when this building was renovated, but we didn't actually put a generator in. At the time, it was too costly. And so we are asking for $150,000 to purchase that emergency generator. It may not cost us that much, but we are edging on the side of caution here because it will depend on what we can find. Additionally, we're asking for $30,000 for building renovations. So I am sure that the question in some minds are, you just renovated this building. Why do you need to do it again? Because we are growing. There are some additional capacity needs as far as this building is concerned. Our plan includes building 2 additional offices, one to house the communications specialist and one to house the new IT person, and then make some modifications as far as existing office space is concerned. So we're asking for $30,000 to cover those renovations in the coming fiscal year. The FTE of the communication specialist is increasing from 0.8 to 1.0 FTE. And additionally, we have budgeted for funds for a regional emergency management, plan to be built out. The city council and the city manager have had previous discussions on the city of Sweet Home joining with multiple agencies in this region out of Lebanon and Sweet Home and Brownsville, I think, to kind of build out a regional emergency management team, or have one person that supports all 3 of those communities. The city of Sweet Home will act as the fiscal agent. Lucky us. Primarily, it's because we were the last ones to do our budget, and so they needed a place to house all of those expenditures. So we've included that in this line in the non-departmental. There is associated revenue to offset part of that regional emergency management startup cost, except for whatever our portion is going to be, which is about 25 or 35,000. 35, I think. 35,000 belongs to us. So that's what I have for non-departmental. Questions that I might be able to answer?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question. So, Brandon, does that emergency management position come out of professional services?
Yes. Initially, it's not going to be a position. It will be a consultant that is hired to build out an emergency plan for the region. And then subsequently, after that is done, basically probably 12 months, they estimate that will take approximately. The following fiscal years will include a person.
So then it would be a salary.
Correct. Yes, it'll change from a professional service to a salary.
Okay, I got that. Thank you.
Mr. Sherman, and that would include money from Brownsville and from Lebanon. So
correct.
We'll be part of that, higher than Brownsville, obviously.
Correct. And so at this point, the organizations that are involved in that is the City of Lebanon, the Lebanon Fire District, the City of Brownsville, and the Sweet Home Fire and Ambulance District, and us.
Yeah, and the Brownsville Fire District.
Yeah.
Well.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to exclude them.
Boy, I have one more comment. $150,000 for a generator. I think that's 3 times what you can get one for.
That will likely be, that would be a brand new one. I can tell you that we will not initially look for a brand new one, but what we wanted to do is budget what may be necessary. I can promise that if we don't need to spend that, we will not spend that.
Well, I understand that, but it seems really high to me.
I was going for that same question, Mr. Chairman, because I know a price of a new generator that covers a 15,000 square foot building is only $30,000. So my question was, what was special about this generator?
This was an estimate given to me by engineers. I couldn't tell you more beyond that because we haven't done the initial legwork other than to receive that initial estimate. Again, if it doesn't come to 150,000, we won't spend that. That money will reside in this is in the general fund, this portion. That money will reside in the general fund to be allocated for future use.
Well, with all due respect, I don't understand why you didn't look to already. Why didn't you research this already to find out some kind of a gigawatt that's going to work for us? That's to put that number out there is just, I think it's not what in my opinion should have been done. You should have probably did some research and gave us a better solid number than $150,000. Not knocking what you're doing. If it costs that much, it costs that much. But And on the
Like I
safe
s-
side of it, that's fine, but it seems like we could have gotten a better number from that. And it's gotta either be diesel, it's gotta be natural gas, or something. It has to be, and I understand it. You gotta have a shut-off thing, and it comes off and on once in a while, just for testing. And we do need one. There's no doubt about that. We do need one. So
This
anyway,
facility
just my thought.
is designated, once we have a generator, as an emergency management center.
I guess that
operations
Mr.
center.
Springman's got his hands up, and I'd like to hear from him. But also, my main question: what was special about this generator? Because I know of a basic standalone generator with a pad and an outside electrician coming in and setting it up was $30,000 for 15,000 square foot building.
Yeah, so I just want to explain what's kind of going into it. I know calculations were done on this building on the loads, but you got to keep in mind also that there's automatic transfers, because this is an emergency center, that it's not just going to be someone out there firing up, putting some gas in it. You're going to have sound continuation because you want to keep it quiet for the community. There's also a pad. So depending on the device, the covering, and all those things, it may be a little high, but I think that number's a lot higher than I think what you guys are thinking. So.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. Yes. So, Brandon, administrative service charges went up 174% for this department. Why? I mean, this section, this fund?
Primarily IT. IT is the biggest reason for all of the administrative support charges, administrative service charges in all of our funds increasing. And then again, the calculation method is based on the number of, let's see, that's admin. So IT, it would have been IT solely in this fund.
So it went from 49,000 to 134,000.
Yes. The additional changes to the admin section of the administrative service, or of the admin service charges, would be the increase in FTE for the communication specialist, would be associated cost increases with an audit. Our annual audit, we've budgeted 40,000. Yep, 40,000 for the coming fiscal year. Typically, that has been at the $35,000 level, and well, I can just go down the list. The items that make up the administrative service charges, that section specifically is the city attorney, communications, website and meeting management, auditing, ordinances, and then a contingency line.
Okay, and what about the finance charges?
Finance charges are separate. The finance charges are based solely on the charges that operate the finance office. That includes the software that is utilized across the city for accounts payable, payroll, cash receipting, the like. It includes utility billing, but the utility billing costs are solely allocated to water and wastewater. No other departments are paying for those two, and for the utility billing components. And then any associated materials costs that the finance office incurs.
Okay, but in non-departmental, it's 119,000 for finance charges.
That's correct. The thing I think to remember about the general fund in non-departmental in this case is that covers KED, municipal court. I don't remember if it covers parks. I'd have to look. In the general fund, what is listed as the general fund is 17 employees. There also has to be a place for, in this calculation method, there has to be a place for the staff of the finance office and the executive departments to go. And so the general fund picks up an additional share because those personnel folks are placed in that calculation. So there's 17 people in the general fund calculation, so they incur 30% of the HR related charges, and then 14% of the expenditure based charges. Correct. So in this case, the general fund is paying $139,000 less some revenue that goes into the internal service fund. So a total of $134,000 to cover communications, the city manager and the city management team, and the IT person. As far as the finance is concerned, they're paying $17,000 a year for payroll costs and $92,000 a year for accounts payable costs, which is primarily staff support in our office. We're also covering $10,000 in bank charges a year, and that's primarily KED and municipal court. They both take credit cards, and so there are associated expenditures with taking credit cards for us as a city. And so the total finance costs in their case is $119,000 for the general fund.
Mr. Chair, I have a question. Did this non-departmental not receive COVID computers? Because there's $8,000 designated for more computers.
Those are primarily to support the servers for the city, servers and associated backups that we may need in-house. We do budget a little bit in case one of our servers does go down. Those are critical components, and so the non-departmental ensures that all of the departments benefit from the one server. Servers aren't cheap, unfortunately, but usually we do have some networking costs that uses.
Any other questions? Okay, then I guess it's time for us to decide whether or not we want to approve this budget and send it to the
So,
council members.
As the slide suggests, it's time for approval. But first, we have a couple of requested changes. These are not changes that were forgotten. Rather, they are changes that, as a result of new information in the last 2 weeks, some of them a week, we're asking for a couple of amendments if it would suit the pleasure of the budget committee. The first one is in gas tax revenue. This one won't impact your motion, but we'd like to make it noted that the state of Oregon has estimated that the city will receive an additional almost $11,000 in gas tax revenue. So we would like to change that budget line in the approved budget. We've discussed previously the water distribution budget. The electricity line was listed at 71,000. We'd like to take 64,000 out of that, believing that was a mistype. That would result in a $7,000 electricity budget for the water division. This last one is new based on council conversations. We had a conversation, staff had a conversation with the city council at the last meeting on Tuesday regarding the incursion of debt to cover capital projects. Ultimately, what came out of that conversation is the city needs to complete its master plans in order to truly decide what the best course of action is going to be in the short and long term. With that said, the initial budget, the proposed budget that we gave you asked for $75,000 to begin the construction of a water master plan. And then our plan, the 5-year capital improvement plan, included another $75,000 for fiscal year 2023. You'd see that next year. What we're asking is to speed that up. We're asking to move that to a 12-month time frame, begin in July. So we'd need another $75,000 to complete the water master plan. So with that said, I'm requesting that the budget committee add $75,000 to the water capital fund to cover that plan.
Why do we need to speed it up? What is the need?
The existing need is the debt rate, the interest rates are very low. And it was a very lengthy conversation with the city council that I'm not prepared to rehash in this setting just because we don't have all of the materials and everything. But ultimately, what the council asked was for us to complete due diligence, essentially. Complete the work that we need to complete. A water master plan will tell us what exactly needs to be done in the next 10 to 20 years so that we can better face emergent needs today. So in order to meet the request of the council and to prepare ourselves for future debt discussions, we need to get that master plan done. So instead of pushing it off until late 2022, we're asking to begin that when July hits.
How's this going to all affect the bottom line?
It will not. It will reduce the fund balance in 2022, but because we were already slated to complete that project in 2023, the ultimate bottom line doesn't change.
It's coming out of the water fund? Or
Water capital. So it does not impact rates. Will only impact the fund balance for a fiscal year before rebounding again.
So, Mr. Chairman, I have a question. So, Brandon, when you make a mistake of $64,000, sorry, I mean, everybody does it. I know that.
That one I'll call fat fingering.
Right. So, I thought Emily might have been playing with it. Anyway, so, so in your overall, the whole picture of the budget, the $64,000 is still in there somewhere, right?
Yes, in your proposed budget right there, it's in the water distribution. We're proposing taking that out.
I understand that, but if you take it out, can you put it in the water capital fund?
Essentially, yes.
I'm just saying
Right.
that we're not looking at
The overall expenditure authority that we are requesting here is really we're just asking for an additional $11,000 as far as the budget committee is concerned.
Sorry, I had to look at the big picture.
Nope, that's fine. And then from an accounting standpoint, certainly there's lots of things for me to consider in that, but we're asking the budget committee to authorize an additional 11,000.
Mr. Chairman, I want to comment on that, and then we can move on. But if we would have had this master plan 10 years ago, we may not be in some of the situation in we're right now with the former people running that place, because it was not a good thing. And the people that have been here for a while knows that. So anyway, yeah, I think we need to get it done.
I will only say that hindsight is 20/20.
Yes. Yeah.
I can't make that recommendation. We are requesting. I need a motion.
I recommend.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, it's passed.
So, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we accept the requested changes to the budget.
I'll second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded.
Just as a point of information, we did that. Mr. Brianna's motion just took care of that.
Well, he said the 11,000. He didn't talk about the other two changes to the budget, did he?
No, he did not.
No, I guess that's true.
So don't we have to accept those other two changes to the budget?
So he accepted, essentially what has happened at this point is you've accepted bullet points 2 and 3 already.
But not one.
Not one.
Not one, right.
So just to cover all our bases.
Okay.
Motion and a second.
It's already done. So Councilor Gerson recommended to the budget committee accept all of the requested changes. It was seconded by Councilor Trask, I believe.
Yes.
Now you can move to a vote.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Just
I was opposed on that. I'm not sure if it went through or not. I think I was still muted.
so at this point, I have Councilor Richards as no, and Councilor Sanchez. We weren't sure if you were trying to confirm or deny the motion.
No, I agree. Yes.
Thank you.
Confirm, right? Yes.
Yeah. So one. Okay. Are there any other adjustments that the budget committee wishes to make before we carve this in stone, so to speak?
Alrighty then.
With that said, we need a motion.
I move that the budget committee of the city of Sweet Home approve the budget for the.
Mr. Mayor, my apologies. Your microphone.
My apologies. Technology is the best. I move that the budget committee of the city of Sweet Home approve the budget for the 2021-2022 fiscal year in the amount of $25,135,101.
I second that.
Do we need a roll call?
Yes, on a roll call.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Richards,
Aye.
Counselor Trask,
Yes.
Counselor Gerson,
Yes.
Counselor Mahler,
Yes.
Counselor Gorley, Counselor Coleman,
Yes.
Garrett Schaefer,
Yes.
Bob Brianna,
Yeah.
David Lohman,
Yes.
Derek Dix,
Yes.
Kenneth Hamlin.
Yes.
And we have one more. If somebody wants to move, I will
do it.
I will read if you'd like. Okay. It sounds like the mayor is making the motion. That the budget committee of the city of Sweet Home approve property taxes for the 2021-2022 fiscal year at the rate of $1.4157 per thousand of assessed value for the permanent rate tax levy, in the amount of $7.85 per thousand of assessed value for the police local option tax levy, and in the amount of $1.17 per thousand of assessed value for the library services local option tax.
Another levy, I just thought we passed one like this.
The budget committee annually has to appropriate the dollars, essentially. So the vote of the community authorizes you to make this motion.
How much of the change is this last year?
0. This is the same as the prior fiscal year and at least 2 fiscal years before that.
So I made that motion.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a seconded. Any
Roll.
discussion?
Oh.
Roll call.
Counselor Trask,
Yes.
Counselor Gerson,
Yes.
Mayor Mahler,
Yes.
Counselor Gorley, Counselor Coleman,
Yes.
Counselor Sanchez,
Yes.
Counselor Richards,
Yes.
Derek Dix,
Yes.
David Lohman,
Yes.
Bob Brianna,
Yes.
Garrett Schaefer,
Yes.
Kenneth Hamlin.
Yes.
A couple of items for the budget committee's note. The city council public hearing will occur on June 8th, 2021. That is the second Tuesday of June. After the public hearing, adoption, barring any changes, shall occur on June 22nd, 2021. Thank you. We do want to thank all of you for your time, your efforts, your dedication. The community, I believe, would back me in saying thank you and appreciates your time that you've devoted here. This is a very important matter, something very near and dear to my heart, obviously. And so thank you from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you.
Don't forget to.
Thank you.
Stop making.
Thank you all.